This day in sports history. It's yet another edition in a long consecutive line of editions of your daily dose of sports history. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more at sportshistorynetwork.com. This is Steve White, your chauffeur on today's sports journey. It is September 8th, and on this day in 2002, it was one of the wildest and most improbable ends to an NFL game. There is a line that you will hear coaches say a lot, that one player and one play did not cost us this game, which in a lot of cases is true. Fans don't necessarily buy into that logic. Their team loses, they're looking for the culprit. But with 100 plays, give or take, in a football game, or in the case of this game I'm going to talk about here, 120 plays, it's kind of hard to argue against one play one player did not cost their team the game. It was week 1 of the NFL season, and the league had gone through a realignment in the offseason, and the fact that Cleveland was hosting the Kansas City Chiefs on this day was due in part to that realignment and how the teams had finished the previous year. This was a great game to watch. Lots of scoring. The game was close throughout. The largest lead, I think, was 13 points in the third quarter. There were a total of 10 lead changes in this one. When Cleveland's Phil Dawson kicked a 40-yard field goal with 33 seconds left in the game, it gave the Browns a 39-37 lead, and they were looking pretty good to pick up the win. They were feeling even better with just 4 seconds left on the clock, and the Chiefs had the ball at their own 47. It was obviously too far for a field goal, so the Chiefs were searching for a miracle. Chiefs quarterback Trent Green felt the pressure, and he stepped up in the pocket, but Browns linebacker Dwayne Rudd grabbed him, spun him around, but before Green hit the ground, he tossed the football backward in desperation. Well, offensive lineman John Tate was right there, and he caught it and started running with it. He advanced the ball to the Browns' 26-yard line before being forced out of bounds. And of course, no time remaining on the clock. Game over, right? Well, it would have been if Dwayne Rudd had celebrated his sack, not a sack of Green, a little bit quieter. Instead, after he thought he had sacked Green and ended the game, he hopped off the ground, ripped off his helmet, and he threw it. The head ref saw it, and he dropped the flag, and he called unsportsmanlike conduct on Rudd. Now, as you may know already, a game cannot end on a defensive penalty. So, no time is put back on the clock, but the Chiefs can run another play called an untimed down. Well, after the penalty was marked off, the Chiefs sent field goal kicker and oldest man in the league at this point, Morton Anderson, to kick the game-winning field goal. His 30-yarder split the uprights, and Kansas City stunned the Browns 40-39. And if you want to rewatch that play, and it is interesting, I've put a link in the show notes. Was there a more unlikely gold medal winner in the history of the Olympics than Wilma Rudolph? She was born premature. She weighed less than 5 pounds at her birth. At different times during her childhood, she contracted polio, scarlet fever, and double pneumonia. She lost the use of her left leg, and at the age of 5, she was forced to wear a leg brace that a doctor said she would have to wear for the rest of her life. Family members massaged her leg daily, and she kept willing herself to walk without the brace. It took 7 years, but she finally regained her ability to walk, and once she did, she began to run like a gazelle. And that's what the European media started to call her when she amazed the world with her blazing speed during the 1960 Rome Olympics. By this point, she had already won gold in the women's 100 meters, setting a world record in the semifinals. She followed that up with another gold medal performance a few days later in the 200 meters, posting an Olympic record in her qualifier. On this day in 1960, Rudolph anchored the women's 4x100 meter relay. The team of Martha Hudson, Lucinda Williams, Barbara Jones, and Rudolph sprinted to the win in 44.72 seconds, securing Wilma's third gold medal of the Olympic Games, becoming the first U.S. female track athlete to win 3 golds in the same Olympics. When Rudolph got back to her hometown in Clarksville, Tennessee, though, the town wanted to celebrate her with a parade. But the mayor of Clarksville at the time was a very strict segregationist and insisted that the parade had to be segregated as well. Well, Wilma refused to take part in the celebration unless everybody was invited. The mayor backed down eventually, and the parade and the banquet that came after were the first integrated events in the history of Clarksville, Tennessee. On this day in 2001, Venus and Serena Williams played against each other in a Grand Slam finals match for the first time. In fact, it was the first time since 1884, 117 years prior, that sisters had met in the final of a major tennis tournament. Now, the two had been on opposite sides of the net before. In fact, they'd played each other 5 times in other tournaments and other Grand Slam events, with Venus winning 4 of those previous 5. Now here in 2001, Venus was the defending U.S. Open champ, and she proved her dominance as not only the best tennis player in the house, but also as the best women's player in the world, with a straight set win 6-1, 6-4, in a little over an hour to win her second straight U.S. Open. Serena was undone a good bit by her own mistakes, with 36 unforced errors in this match, compared to Venus's 19. Venus also ripped a 120-mile-an-hour serve in the second set that ripped the racket right out of Serena's hand. Even though Venus enjoyed winning Grand Slam titles, she did not really take much joy from this one, saying later, "If I was playing a different opponent, I'd probably be a lot more joyful. But I'm happy to have won the U.S. Open again." And on this day in 1965, Bert Camperneris showcased his utility by playing all 9 positions in the same game. Well, really, it was more about the owner of the Kansas City A's, Charlie Finley, wanting to sell more tickets to watch his dismal team play. At this point in the year, the A's had already lost 87 games. They were mired in last place, 35 games out of first. They could draw a decent crowd for Saturday games, but they struggled to bring anybody to the ballpark for a midweek tilt. This was a Wednesday night game, and Finley called it Bert Camperneris Night. And his marketing strategy actually worked, bringing 21,000 to Municipal Stadium. And that was more like a Saturday crowd than a Wednesday one. Camperneris started the game out at shortstop, went to second in the second inning. He played third in the third, then all 3 outfield positions, back to first, and then pitched in the 8th inning. It was the only time in his 19-year Major League career that he actually pitched. On the mound, he got Jose Cardenal to pop out, but then struggled to find the plate walking the next 2. In the process, just to make it more unusual, he pitched with both his right and left hands. He did strike out 1, gave up a hit, and an earned run. In the 9th, he got behind the plate to play catcher, becoming the first and only player to play all 9 positions. However, Campy was involved in a collision at the plate to record the final out of the inning. But in the process, he injured his shoulder and his neck. Now, he preserved the tie and the game went to extra innings, but Camperneris would not be a part of that. The game went to the 13th, with California scoring a couple of runs to spoil Bert Camperneris Night with the 5-3 win. And time now for today's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Violet Jessup considered herself to be a very fortunate woman. She survived 3 shipwrecks: the Olympic in 1911, the Titanic in 1912, and the Britannic in 1916. Her ordeal with the Britannic was the closest she came to perishing. She was hit in the head and then was sucked below the surface when the keel of the ship sank. But she lived to tell the tale of all 3 of her shipwrecks. That's all I've got for you today. This and every episode of This Day in Sports History is researched, written, voiced, and produced by me, Steve White. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.